You felt it happen. Maybe not the exact moment, maybe not even the exact day, but you felt something inside you go quiet, permanent, final. It wasn't dramatic. There was no breakdown, no crisis, no rock-bottom moment where you screamed at the sky and swore to change. It was quieter than that, colder than that. You just stopped. Stopped caring what they thought. Stopped explaining yourself. Stopped trying to prove you weren't what they said you were. Stopped waiting for permission. Stopped seeking approval. Stopped pretending you were okay with things you weren't okay with. Something that had been running your entire life just turned off. And the strangest part? You don't miss it. You thought you would. You thought losing it would feel like losing a part of yourself, like something vital was gone and you'd spend the rest of your life trying to get it back. But you don't want it back, because what died wasn't you. It was the thing that was preventing you from becoming you. And everyone around you can feel the difference. They can't name it. They can't point to what changed, but they know something's different, and it makes them uncomfortable. Good. Let me tell you what died. Let me tell you why it had to die. And let me tell you what you became the moment it stopped breathing. Because if this hasn't happened to you yet, you're still carrying a corpse. You're still pretending something's alive that's been killing you for years. And if it has happened, you need to understand what you are now, because the world isn't built for men like you. And the people who used to manage you are going to have a problem with what you became. What died was your need, not your wants, not your preferences, not your desires. Your need. The thing that controlled you. The thing that made you negotiable. The thing that kept you manageable. Your need for approval died. You used to shape yourself based on who was in the room. You'd adjust your opinions, your behavior, your energy, your entire presentation of self, depending on who you were trying to impress or avoid offending. You were a different person with your boss than your friends, a different person with women than with men, a different person with your family than alone. You weren't lying exactly, you were just managing, constantly calculating what version of yourself would be most acceptable, most liked, most safe. That's dead now. You say what you mean. You mean what you say. And if they don't like it, that's not your problem anymore. You're not adjusting. You're not softening. You're not explaining yourself into a shape they'll accept. This isn't arrogance. This is something colder. You just genuinely stopped caring whether they approve. Their opinion of you isn't currency anymore. It doesn't buy you anything. It doesn't change anything. It just is. And you let it be. Your need for external validation died. You used to measure yourself by their metrics. Success meant what they said it meant. Happiness meant what they said it meant. Being a good man meant what they said it meant. You chased degrees, titles, salaries, relationships, approval markers, social proof. Anything that would let you point to something outside yourself and say, "See, I'm valuable. I matter. I did it right. That's dead now. You know what you're worth. And it has nothing to do with their measuring sticks. You're not trying to prove anything to anyone anymore because you don't accept their authority to judge you in the first place. This is dangerous because it means you can't be controlled by shame. You can't be managed by guilt. You can't be motivated by fear of disappointing people whose opinions you don't value. Your need to be liked died. You used to avoid conflict. You'd let things slide. You'd bite your tongue. You'd compromise on things that matter to you just to keep the peace, maintain the relationship, avoid being seen as difficult. You were so afraid of being disliked that you made yourself smaller, quieter, more agreeable, less of a problem. That's dead now. You're not starting fights. You're not being an asshole for sport. But you're also not absorbing disrespect to keep things comfortable. You're not pretending you're fine with things you're not fine with. You're not managing other people's emotions at the expense of your boundaries. And when they push, you push back. Not with anger, not with explanation, just with immovable presence. This is the line. You don't cross it. And if that makes you difficult, so be it. Your need for rescue died. You used to wait for the right opportunity, for someone to see your potential, for circumstances to change, for permission, for the universe to align, for someone to save you from whatever you were stuck in. That's dead now. You realized nobody's coming. There's no rescue, no deus ex machina, no moment where everything suddenly makes sense and falls into place and you get what you deserve. There's just you and what you build and what you're willing to do to build it. This is the most dangerous death of all, because men who don't need rescue are ungovernable. They don't wait for permission. They don't ask for help. They don't stop when told to stop. They just build. And if the system doesn't give them what they need, they find another way. That's what died. Need. The thing that made you controllable. The thing that made you safe. The thing that made you acceptable to people who benefit from your compliance. And in its place, something harder grew. Here's how you know it died. Here's how you recognize the shift. Sign 1. You stopped explaining yourself. You used to justify everything. Your choices, your opinions, your boundaries. Like you needed their understanding to validate your decisions. You don't do that anymore. Someone questions you? That's what I'm doing. No defense, no reasoning, no attempt to make them see it your way. You're not looking for their agreement. You're informing them of reality. Watch their reaction. They're not used to this. They're used to you negotiating, defending, seeking approval. When you don't, they don't know what to do with you. This is you, right now, in daily life. Your friend asks why you're not drinking. Old you. Oh, I'm just trying to be healthier. You know, cutting back. But I might have one later. We'll see. New you. I'm not drinking. That's it. No justification, no apology, No opening for negotiation. Your coworker questions your decision. Old you spends 15 minutes explaining your reasoning, seeking validation. New you. This is how I'm handling it. End of conversation. You're not being rude. You're being direct. And directness without the softener of seeking approval reads as dangerous to people who are used to managing you. Sign 2. Silence stopped feeling uncomfortable. You used to fill every gap, every awkward pause, every moment of tension. You'd talk, joke, deflect, anything to ease the discomfort. You don't do that anymore. Someone says something disrespectful, you just look at them. No response, just eyes. Let them sit in what they just said. Let the silence do the work. Someone asks an invasive question. You don't owe them an answer. You don't owe them comfort. Just silence. They'll either figure it out or they won't. This is daily applicable. Someone makes a subtle dig at you in a group. Old you laughs it off, makes a self-deprecating joke, keeps it light. New you just stops, looks at them, doesn't say a word, lets everyone feel how uncomfortable that just got. They were testing you, seeing if you'd absorb it like you used to. You didn't. You just let them fail the test publicly. Silence is a weapon now, not because you're trying to intimidate, because you're no longer afraid of discomfort. You let things be uncomfortable. You let people sit in the consequences of their words. And that shift in energy is palpable. Sign 3. You started saying no without guilt. You used to say yes to everything. Yes to favors. Yes to plans you didn't want. Yes to requests that drained you. Because saying no felt selfish, felt wrong, felt like you were letting people down. You don't feel that anymore. Someone asks for something you don't want to give? No. That's the whole sentence. No excuses, no elaborate reasoning, no apology. Just no. Daily application. Your friend asks you to help them move. Old you. Oh man, I'd love to, but I've got this thing. Maybe if I can move it, let me check my schedule. I really wish I could. New you. Can't do it. They push? Not available. That's it. Your family expects you at some obligation you don't want to attend. Old you manufactures an excuse, feels guilty for weeks. New you. I'm not coming. They get upset? That's their problem. You're not managing their emotions anymore. This isn't about being selfish. This is about understanding that your time, energy, and presence are yours to allocate. And you don't need to justify how you allocate them. The guilt died, and in its place, clarity about what's yours to give and what's not. Sign 4. You stopped chasing. You used to pursue approval, pursue women who were lukewarm, pursue friends who didn't reciprocate energy, pursue opportunities that didn't want you, because you thought persistence proved value. You don't do that anymore. Someone's interest is inconsistent? You don't chase. You observe. You let them reveal themselves through their actions. And if their actions don't match their words, you just move on. No drama, no confrontation, just removal of your attention. This shows up everywhere. Woman texts you inconsistently, cancels plans, keeps you in the rotation but never commits. Old you would keep trying, keep investing, keep hoping she'd see your value. New you? You stop reaching out. Not as a game, not as strategy, just because your attention is finite and she's not earning it. Job opportunity strings you along, keeps you in interview limbo, won't commit. Old you stays on the hook, keeps checking in, keeps hoping. New you moves on. They know where to find you if they're serious. You're not playing hard to get. You're not being strategic. You just stop chasing things that don't chase you back. And that shift in energy changes everything. Sign 5. Weak men started avoiding you. You didn't change how you treat people. You're not being hostile. But something about you now makes certain men uncomfortable. The men who complain constantly but never act. The men who blame everyone but themselves. The men who need constant validation and emotional labor from everyone around them. They used to gravitate toward you because you'd absorb their energy, you'd listen, you'd help, you'd validate. You were useful to them. They don't do that anymore. They avoid you, because your presence now reminds them of what they're not doing. Your silence reads as judgment, even when you're not judging. Your boundaries feel like rejection, even when you're just protecting your energy. Daily life. That friend who only calls when he needs something? He stopped calling, not because you told him off, because he can feel you're not available for that dynamic anymore. That coworker who constantly complains but never changes? He doesn't come to you anymore. You didn't push him away. He just knows on some level that you're not carrying his weight. This isn't something you did. This is something you stopped doing. You stopped being useful to people who take, and they can feel it. Sign 6. You became comfortable with being alone. You used to need people around, need plans, need social validation, need noise. Because being alone meant sitting with yourself, and sitting with yourself meant facing things you didn't want to face. That's dead. You prefer being alone now, not because you hate people, because most people are exhausting. Most conversation is empty. Most social interaction is performance. And you'd rather be alone than perform. Daily application. Friday night, everyone's making plans, expecting you to join. Old you feels obligated, goes even though you don't want to, performs social energy you don't feel. New you? I'm staying in. No elaboration, no FOMO, no guilt. Someone calls, wants to vent, wants emotional labor. Old you picks up, listens, invests energy. New you sees the call, decides if you have the bandwidth, and if you don't answer, and you don't feel bad about it. You're not being antisocial, you're being selective, and selective men who are comfortable in silence are dangerous to a system that needs you dependent on external validation. Sign 7. You stopped trying to save people. You used to think you could fix them, help them, show them the way. If you just gave them enough time, enough patience, enough of yourself, they'd change. That's dead. You realized people change when they want to change, not when you want them to. And your investment in their potential doesn't obligate them to meet it. So you stopped. Stopped giving advice that isn't asked for. Stopped staying in relationships hoping they'd become different people. Stopped carrying people who won't carry themselves. This shows up in every relationship. Friend stuck in the same pattern for years, complaining but never changing? Old you keeps investing, keeps helping, keeps believing they'll figure it out. New you? Let me know when you're ready to change.
and you step back. Woman you're seeing has potential, but isn't meeting you where you are. Old you stays, hoping she'll grow into what you need. New you? This isn't working, and you leave. You're not being cold, you're being realistic. And realism, without the sugarcoating of hope, is uncomfortable for people who are used to you absorbing their stagnation. So what are you now that the need is dead? You're dangerous. Not because you're aggressive, not because you're violent, not because you're trying to hurt anyone. You're dangerous because you can't be controlled. You can't be shamed into compliance. You can't be guilted into service. You can't be manipulated by people who used to manage you through your need for their approval. You're dangerous because you're outcome independent. You want things, but you don't need them. And that distinction changes everything. You want a relationship, but you don't need one to feel complete. So you're not compromising on fundamentals to avoid being alone.
You want success, but you don't need external validation to know you're valuable. So you're not chasing metrics that don't actually matter to you. You want connection, but you don't need constant social validation. So you're not performing for people who don't add to your life. This is the most dangerous version of you, because you're playing a different game now, and people who are still playing the old game can't compete with someone who's not playing at all. You're dangerous because you've learned to regulate yourself. You don't need someone else to calm you down, hype you up, validate your feelings, or tell you what to do. You handle your own emotional state. You process your own problems. You make your own decisions. This makes you completely self-sufficient, and self-sufficient men don't need systems, don't need institutions, don't need permission structures. You're dangerous because you tell the truth, not to be cruel, not to prove a point, just because lying is exhausting and you stopped having energy for it. Someone asks your opinion, you give it, unfiltered. If they can't handle it, that's their problem. Someone's behavior is unacceptable, you say so, clearly, without softening it to protect their feelings. Most people perform, lie, soften, manage. You just state reality, and reality without the cushion of social performance is brutal. You're dangerous because you're comfortable with conflict. You don't seek it, but you don't avoid it either. Someone crosses a line, you address it. Someone disrespects you, you correct it. Someone tests you, you pass by not reacting the way they expect. Old you avoided conflict because you needed to be liked. New you accepts conflict because sometimes it's necessary. And men who are comfortable with necessary conflict are impossible to manipulate. This is what you became when the need died. Ungovernable, self-sufficient, honest, comfortable with conflict, outcome independent, not better, not worse, just fundamentally different. And the world isn't built for men like this. Here's what nobody tells you. That thing that died, it was supposed to die. It wasn't a part of you. It was a survival mechanism you built when you were too young to know better. You learned to need approval because as a child, approval meant safety. Validation meant you were valued. Being liked meant you were protected. So you built your entire personality around getting those things. You made yourself useful, agreeable, non-threatening, easy to manage, and it worked when you were powerless, when you were dependent, when you had no other option. But you're not a child anymore, and what kept you safe as a child is killing you as a man. The need for approval makes you negotiable, makes you controllable, makes you weak. It had to die so you could live. Not metaphorically, actually. You couldn't become who you're supposed to be while still carrying the survival mechanisms of who you had to be to survive childhood. So something had to give. And what gave was the part of you that needed them more than you needed yourself. That death wasn't failure. It was evolution. And every man who becomes dangerous goes through it. Some earlier, some later, some never. But the ones who do, they're the ones you feel when they walk into a room. They're the ones who don't need to announce themselves because their presence does it for them. They're the ones who seem calm while everyone else is performing. That's you now. If the death happened, and if it hasn't, it will. Or you'll spend your life pretending something's alive that's been suffocating you since you were old enough to learn that being yourself was dangerous. So here's where you are. Something in you died. The need, the constant seeking of approval, validation, external proof that you matter. And in its place, something colder, harder, and infinitely more capable grew. You're not better than you were. You're just no longer pretending to be something you're not to make other people comfortable. You don't explain yourself. You don't chase. You don't compromise on fundamentals. You don't need rescue. You don't manage other people's emotions. You don't perform. You just are. And you let the consequences of that be what they are. This isn't the end of a journey. It's the beginning of a different one. One where you're no longer managing how people see you. You're just living in alignment with what you actually value. And letting the people who can handle that stay. And letting everyone else leave. Most men never get here. They spend their entire lives performing, seeking, needing, managing, dying slowly while pretending they're alive. You're not most men. Something in you died, and you've never been more alive.